The Power of Now, written by Eckhart Tolle. The book teaches us how to separate ourselves from our ego, a component of the mind that aspires to control your thoughts and actions. In this video, we've outlined 9 ideas from the book. Introduction. Why should I care? Many of us spend our time worrying about a future we cannot hope to influence or being stuck in the regret-filled past. Even though we don't have a clear understanding of how to do it, we yet hold on to the hope that we may somehow enhance our lives, become happier, and achieve enlightenment. Enter Eckhart Tolle, popular author and well-known spiritual teacher, who offers readers numerous strategies for negotiating the challenging terrain of their inner life and their ties to the past, present, and future in the power of now. The emphasis on living in the present moment as a means of avoiding the majority of the pain that we often experience is at the core of Tolle's, quite practical, philosophy. To this end, the book focuses on the relationship between the mind and suffering, providing a variety of viewpoints on the numerous ways in which we use our minds in ways that are destructive to ourselves, such as to lock ourselves in cycles of suffering and prevent ourselves from experiencing happiness. Millions of people have seen improvements in their lives thanks to the power of now, particularly in their interpersonal connections and, most importantly, in their sense of self-worth and capacity to actively engage with their life. Principle 1. You can considerably enhance your life by concentrating just on the now and ignoring the past or future. Many of us aspire to improve our lives and discover inner peace. Enlightenment is what we're looking for, but we don't know how to get there. The first step can perhaps be simpler than you think. We frequently dwell on the recent past and distant future. We can be remembering or regretting one minute and planning or fretting the next. In the meantime, we disregard the only moment that is truly ours, the present. Now. Because nothing ever happens in the past or the future and everything always happens in the present, only the present is significant. Because your senses can only provide you with information about this particular time, everything you feel must be experienced in the moment. Therefore, it is not entirely accurate to claim that something occurred in the past, rather, it occurred in a single present moment. What we refer to as the past is actually a collection of moments that were there once but are now in the past. The same is true of the future, which consists of present moments that are yet to occur. As this implies, there are many benefits to living in the now as opposed to fretting about the future or focusing on the past. If you succeed in doing that, you won't encounter any significant issues, only minor ones that can be resolved as they come up. For instance, a difficult activity like writing a scientific paper frequently appears to be too big and difficult to complete. You won't succeed if you're worried about the job that needs to be done or regret missing opportunities to focus on it in the past. But if you just work on one small issue at a time, collecting the data, creating a structure, and writing the first chapter, you'll be able to finish it more quickly. So make an effort to be present. You'll be amazed at how much better your life will be after you quit clinging to the past and fearing the future. Principle 2. The majority of the pain you feel is caused by a part of you that requires it in order to survive. Say you're able to stay in the now and let go of thoughts of the past or the future. What happens when you feel pain after that? How can you manage both bodily and mental suffering if pain is felt right now? Pain is nothing more than your own internal aversion to circumstances outside of your control. When you are unhappy with the way things are but don't feel empowered to make a change, you feel agony. On an emotional level, this causes a bad feeling to surface. You are unable to change many of the things that you are dissatisfied about because you spend so much time thinking about the past and the future but can only live in the now. As a result, you grow internally resistant to the way things are, which you feel as pain. The pain body, a component of the self that depends on you experiencing pain in order to survive, is another example of self-created suffering. Every time you feel pain, the pain body, which is made up of all of your unpleasant experiences, grows and becomes stronger. It will therefore attempt to depress and miserable you. This cycle might go on for a very long time until you finally identify wholly with your pain body and the pain becomes an integral part of you. You'll be terrified to let it go since pain would have become such a significant part of your existence by that point that doing so would jeopardize your very identity. For instance, your pain body has gained over when something irritates or frustrates you and you feel yourself getting upset. Your capacity to reason and act clearly is impaired by your rage, which just makes your misery worse. Even though it appears that all suffering originates from the outside world, most of it actually originates from within and is self-created. The good news is that you can change it because it was your own doing, as you'll learn in the next section. Principle 3. The ego is an aspect of your mind that prevents you from experiencing happiness. Have you ever questioned why certain individuals seem to deliberately harm themselves? Why are there so many miserable individuals when nobody wants to be unhappy? Your ego, a component of your mind that subconsciously directs your thoughts and actions, is to blame. The majority of people are unaware of the extent to which their ego influences their life, since it is difficult to see. For instance, you might realize, and possibly regret, that you overreacted if you subsequently think back on a disagreement you had with someone. However, you just weren't conscious of anything influencing or guiding your thinking and conduct while the argument was in full swing. Why does the ego act in this way? It works against your best interests, since it needs your unhappiness to survive, thus it constantly gets in the way of enjoyment. Why so many people suffer when no one actively seeks out suffering could be explained by the existence of a negative aspect of your mind that breeds misery. For instance, some people choose to continue in incredibly unpleasant and harmful relationships, sabotaging their own pleasure on purpose. To exert control over your actions and thoughts, the ego puts you in situations where you are at odds with others and dissatisfied with your existing circumstances. For instance, drama arises whenever two or more egos collide, as is evident in small offices or houses. Even though people may want to coexist peacefully, their egos force them to become irritated at small things and overreact. It's probably the ego's doing if you find yourself suddenly engaged in a heated argument over something trivial, like who gets to clean the kitchen next or whether a particular television program is excellent or not. A harmful aspect of the human psyche is the ego. If you allow it to take over, it will cause you a lot of pain because it has no boundaries and wants to be the most significant part of you. Principle 4. Separate yourself from your head and concentrate on your body if you desire a more fulfilling and nearly painless life. One of many reasons why it's crucial to distance yourself from your head and pay greater attention to your body is the ego's strength. Indeed, a lot of wise people have stressed the value of putting more emphasis on the body than the mind. Why? Pain is a mental phenomenon. It causes pain because it keeps thinking about the past or making plans for the future, filling your life with regretful memories and anxious-inducing future possibilities. It keeps you from being in the present as a result. As a result, you constantly worry about things you can't change because you can't change the past or the future. And that causes discomfort. It is obvious that we need to find a means to lessen the mind's influence and strength. How? Through changing the way we think and putting the body first. What is beneficial for you is known by your body. You may very clearly understand what matters in your life by paying attention to your body. Jesus employed various proverbs and allegories to emphasize the value of the body, such as your body as a temple. His body was missing from the grave, according to the accounts of his resurrection and ascension to heaven, and he went to heaven with his entire body, not just his mind and soul. Nobody has attained enlightenment by focusing just on their minds and ignoring their bodies. The Buddha's 6-year fasting and abstinence period, which he underwent to distance himself from his body, provides a striking example. The outcome? He did feel physically disconnected from his body, but he didn't feel much happier or wiser as a result. Only after giving up these practices and regaining a sense of body awareness did he achieve nirvana. Principle 5. The best method to distance yourself from the mind and thereby relieve yourself from suffering is to observe it objectively. You must distance yourself from your thoughts once you realize that it is hurting you and keeping you from fully experiencing the present. How? If you are not fully aware of your mind and the control it has over you, you will never be able to comprehend the innumerable small and subtle ways it affects your thoughts, actions, and ultimately, your happiness. For instance, ask yourself, what will my next idea be? To examine your thoughts. You'll notice that it takes some time before the following clear notion pops into your head if you give that question your complete attention. You were able to interrupt the train of thought by making a remark. If you do it frequently enough, you'll begin to realize how much your mind is constantly preoccupied. You'll also have learned how to use the main technique for distracting yourself from your thoughts. You can observe your mind objectively using the second option at your disposal. You are once again utilizing your mind when you judge something, since judgment is a mental act in and of itself. For instance, if you suddenly feel like running in the middle of your task, just act on it. Go outside and run because your body will tell you what is best for it. Then, pay attention to the nagging voice inside your head telling you that you ought to be working right now rather than squandering time or running around. But don't assign a positive or negative value to that voice, and don't try to heed the counsel. Just acknowledge it and grin at it. By doing this, you'll discover how to observe your thoughts without needing to pursue them to their intended destinations. Try to maintain a constant state of attention, according to Key Notion 6. As you practice distancing yourself from your thoughts, you might want to embrace an additional strategy called active waiting. This is a particular form of waiting condition, similar to when you are conscious that something significant or grave could occur at any time. Your entire focus is on the present moment when you're in this state. There is no time for the wondering, planning, or remembering that typically takes our attention away from the moment when we are actively waiting. When taking an exam, for instance, you shouldn't waste time worrying about the outcomes. Instead, you should be totally present and pay attentive attention to the work that is being presented to you. You can accomplish that by going into an active waiting state both before and during the exam. Principle 6. You keep an eye on your body because it needs to be prepared for anything that happens while you're in this state. This emphasis on the body, as we've already seen, is also essential to being present. For instance, Zen masters would approach their waiting students while they were hiding and trying to attack them while they had their eyes closed. The students were able to sense the approaching masters and avoid their attack because the waiting made them fully focus on their bodies. Many spiritual instructors advise their students to adopt this waiting condition because they thought it would result in a happy existence. When his disciples questioned Jesus about how to live a decent and peaceful life, for instance, he responded, "Be like a servant waiting for the return of the master." The servant is constantly on alert because he doesn't know when the master will arrive. In order to avoid missing the master, he doesn't make any elaborate plans for the future and is continuously alert to his surroundings. Principle 7. For your spouse, staying in the now can be challenging, but it can also strengthen your bond. You can now live in the moment and are no longer entirely dependent on your thinking after having completed the prior phases. However, how will that alter your regular activities? Your connections, as an illustration? A regular person finds it incredibly challenging to coexist with someone who is fully present in the moment. While the person who is present, calm, and at peace is regarded as a threat, the non-present individual's ego thrives on crises. The ego of the non-present person responds by causing more issues, such as by criticizing the other, engaging in pointless conversation to disturb the peace, or repeatedly bringing up the past to distract them from the present. Why would they act in that way? The simplest way to respond to this is with an analogy. Just as darkness cannot endure close to light, it is challenging for someone who is still under the influence of the ego to be close to someone who is living in the present for an extended period of time. Strong opposites are incompatible with one another. The absence of light is accompanied by the presence of a candle. Water puts out fires, so do other liquids. But if you do it well, staying in the moment can also significantly strengthen your bond with your partner, since you'll be able to avoid criticizing, judging, or trying to alter your spouse in favor of seeing him or her as a unique individual. Living in the moment also gives you the ability to break through seemingly unending patterns, such as never-ending arguments. You can listen to your partner without passing judgment, thanks to the inner calm that being present brings. It might be quite challenging for your partner to live with you if you only think about the moment. It might even turn into a fresh relationship test. However, in the long term, it may present a significant chance for improvement for both your spouse and your relationship. Principle 8. Not all suffering can be prevented. Accepting the present does not entail putting one's sentiments of sadness or anguish aside. Even if you totally inhabit the moment, you will occasionally experience despair and pain. How should you handle them, though? Simply ignore them and act as if nothing is wrong? That doesn't seem like a wise move. While it is true that most pain is brought on by oneself, this does not imply that this is the case with all pain. The suffering you endure at the hands of individuals who are still under the influence of their destructive ideas is a prime example of inevitable suffering. The loss of a close relative is another illustration. This anguish is obviously unavoidable because you cannot make everyone around you enlightened, and you most surely cannot stop death. What can be done, then? You can merely accept something traumatic for what it is when it causes you genuine suffering. For instance, if a loved one passes away, you will undoubtedly grieve and experience melancholy. But you'll spare yourself unnecessary pain if you can accept this as something that just is and cannot be changed. You shouldn't feel guilty or ashamed about feeling sad. It's a normal emotion. The situation is what it is. By accepting this, you can stop wishing that things were different all the time. You can escape the majority of the suffering in your life by being present, but not all of it. Living in the now does not entail denying or stifling sorrow, either. Instead, it gives you the courage within to accept such challenging and painful realities of life. Principle 9. Living in the present moment without resistance is not surrendering. Although having inner peace is a good thing to have, inner serenity is not very valuable when your outward living circumstances are poor. Does embracing the present necessarily result in a passivity in which you are unaware of or unwilling to make any changes to anything that bothers you? No, not always. Living in the moment is a process of feeling and awareness that takes place internally. It does not require that you adopt a submissive external demeanor. For instance, you wouldn't just convince yourself that you always wanted to be trapped in the mud if you were already there. Instead, you might make an effort to break free of it without panicking. Even new resources and solutions to difficulties may become available to you if you choose to live in the present. It's undeniably true that by avoiding wasting your inner energy on difficulties, living in the present can give you new levels of strength and tenacity. Actually, by staying in the now, you don't notice any difficulties at all, just discrete, controllable circumstances that you can deal with one at a time. You become much more efficient as a result. Living in the moment and accepting what is does not entail choosing to live a passive existence or deciding not to even attempt to improve it. You are instead better able to understand what is genuinely wrong at any given time and have the strength to change those things for the better by keeping the past and future in their right contexts and concentrating on the present. Final thoughts. This book's main takeaway is: never think about the past or the future. Try to keep your thoughts from overthinking and live in the now. This approach will lessen your suffering and enhance your quality of life. I appreciate your attention. Using the link in the description box, you may purchase a copy of this book from Amazon if you're curious to learn more. Do not forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with your loved ones.